Hi, Heidi. Hi, Levi. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Ariana. So, how did you guys become part of this documentary?
Um, well, we um actually through social media. So we had posted a picture of ourselves on Instagram and hashtag Trans Santa. And then we got reached out to and just asked if we would be interested in participating in Santa Camp and what that would look like. And so then it all came to fruition from there.
What was the best part about Santa Camp and what was the most frustrating?
Um, I think the best part about Santa Camp was the learning piece for me. Like, I think there were a lot of aspects that I hadn't really considered in like the role of Santa that I play. And so I think just that and that everyone was just really welcoming. I think I had hesitations going into it. And so, um, but just felt very at ease when we were there. I think the part that was hardest for us was the panel discussion that occurred. There were just a lot of things that were a little cringy. There was a lot of like hand squeezing and making eye contact. And yeah, when we walked away from that, I think we definitely needed a minute after that just to process everything that we had just kind of like heard from a panel who were representing someone that like Santa is something that we believe in, and like that idea of just jolly and caring, and it was just like put in this light of how Mrs. Claus should be portrayed, and it was very anti-feminist, and so we had some issues with that. I don't know if you want to add to that.
You kind of said it all. I think the other sort of joyous part for me was just getting to experience all the different Santas. Like, you can tell even just in the documentary, like, it is a strange space walking in to that many older cis white dudes and not feel intimidated. We definitely did feel intimidated at first, but getting to know more of their stories, having a Santa come out to us at some point during camp and be like, I've never come out in another space. Like, thank you so much for representing. Like, I was afraid I couldn't be a Santa if I were my full person. Like, those were some of the moments that I think we most cherished.
Yeah.
Well, how does it feel like for both of you? Because even in the documentary, one of the kids that came to visit you like asked for Christmas in their transition to be able to get a binder. I feel like people diverge very like intimate and personal things, and usually to the first time to both of you. Like, how does it feel like to be in that position?
For me, it's like it, it makes it seem to me like there's an importance to what I'm doing. The fact that a kid was comfortable enough to ask for a binder, right? Like, that's something that I think I lived very many years just kind of sheltering, just because I didn't have an adult I could say that to. I didn't feel comfortable saying it, right? And so I think I feel very fortunate, and it makes me feel like what I'm doing is necessary and needed. Yeah, just obviously through Santa Camp you learn that you can't make promises, but you want so much for the kids to just be able to live their and be their whole selves. So
I think too, part of Santa Camp that is then mirrored in our experiences being trans Santa and Dr. Claus is young folks don't just go to ask for the newest toy. Like, often Santa represents that magic for that thing that you think is unattainable. So a lot of the well-established Santas talk about kids that ask for their mom to come back because she died, or ask for a sibling to no longer have cancer. And for us, we get the gender and the sexuality aligned and affirming asks of like, are you magic enough that you can make this thing that's not currently my reality a part of my reality so I can feel safe and loved and accepted? It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is really
Like it's
beautiful.
a privilege to bear witness to
Yeah.
young folks' truths.
Yeah, like it actually is making me tear up because you guys are kind of like their first form of therapy in a way, like the first line and introduction to hopefully something new. How did you feel the day of your guys' first gig? You had to change location, you had protesters. Like, what was going through your head? Because obviously you were excited to be Santa and Dr. Santa, but you also had all of this very negative, ignorant energy.
Yeah, I think like
Just
for
another
us,
day.
yeah, just another day, unfortunately. But also just for me, it was more about like, I hope the kids don't have to experience that, like whether it's on their way in or on their way out of the event. I knew at the event we definitely had security and we were very much sheltered from what was actually happening. But that was my thing of like, I hope it doesn't ruin the experience for the kids. And because we did have to move locations, I hope all the kids that were going to be able to go will still be able to experience it, right? Like that was probably our biggest concern of like, are people going to miss out just because of the hate that was happening? So yeah.
Yeah. And I've obviously had this experience as a Black woman, but for you guys, what does it kind of feel like that you guys are feeling in the moment that you're one person representing this one group or multiple groups for people, and that you kind of have to be the perfect person in that situation?
We don't put that pressure on
Yeah.
ourselves. And maybe that is, you know, our privilege talking, but we very much come to this knowing like we are not a representation of anything but ourselves in our queerness, in our transness, in our love. All we can speak to is our own experience and our own perspective. And that we hope that that helps others that are in our community feel empowered to do the same thing and help people understand that there is not one story for any community. There's not one story for Black women. There's not one story for trans Santas. There's not one story for Dr. Clauses. Like we are just a part of a bigger story, and here's our version. Here's our perspective.
Yes. And a lot of people's first introduction to Santa isn't seeing Santa, it's books, movies, TV shows. Do you believe those need to be diversified as well?
Yeah. Actually, we out of this experience have written a children's book called You Can Be a Claus Too. And basically just saying like anyone can be Santa, because Santa is this idea of just acceptance and belonging and empowerment and you know all of those things of like just spreading joy and spreading cheer and so that's kind of our ongoing thing is you can be a Claus too, right? Like and let's make sure that people have access to that and like have that feeling of oh I could do that too, right? Like yeah.
Speaking of wanting to be a Claus, how do you kind of come to a person, especially because you guys are partners and working together? Like, who came first and just like, hey, like, I want to be a Claus? Like, I feel like that's a whole conversation. Okay, you, Dr. Claus.
I'm the guilty party. So my background is in education and counseling, and about 4 years ago, I was working in a space with teen moms and their babies, and every year there was a holiday party where they had a Santa coming, and a lot of the students, the young people had said to me like, Santa's a little creepy. I don't know how I feel. I wish it was someone that I knew. Like, this is such a weird thing. And so we had some conversations about it. And I was really embedded in that community. They had met Levi, who had done some volunteering. And ultimately, we decided, I decided, oh, we'll be Santa and Mrs. Claus for this experience. And so I came home and voluntold Levi, and he loves me a lot. And so he signed up for it. And it just sort of went from there, because what we found is like, we had no agenda for what being Clauses meant. Like, we had no interest in young people sitting on our lap. We had no interest in being the one to hold them. Whereas a lot of Santas, a lot of parents too, let's be honest, have this expectation that we need this perfect picture. And so there's sort of this toxicity around it, around like removing a young person's consent and making sure that they sit on this strange man's lap Whereas we were like, do you want to stand and hold your baby? Like, we'll stand by you, or we'll, you know, like whatever the scenario that felt most empowering and consent filled was how we approached it. And through that process, we started to see that those students were coming out to us because they knew who we were. And then it became like, oh, we can be more visible about that. And it went from there. So that, you know, our future sort of gigs, volunteer experiences, were spaces that are already LGBTQ affirming, where they wanted to pull us in to help support that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. I love the documentary, and I hope it just brings more awareness to me, which I feel is kind of common sense, but I hope it is awesome for everyone. But thank you so much, and Merry Christmas. I hope you have a great season.
Thank you. You
Thanks.
too.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Bye.